Welcome back to the 1% podcast. This is your host, Simon Cromer. And today with me live, I have Austin Frye from Yachte, and he also owns his own detailing company. So we're going to dive into this today. We're going to go deep into products, ceramic coatings, and we're just excited to have you with us today. So Austin, what do you say? Are you glad to be here?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out. Been looking forward to this all week.
Yeah, me and Austin had a quick conversation behind scenes to kind of catch up and really plan this out. So we're just going to jump into kind of your story, Austin. We want to kind of share with the audience kind of your story into detailing, maybe how you got started. I don't know a whole lot about how you got into it. So if you just want to tell us a little bit about that.
I got my start about a little over 15 years ago. I got my first boat and I would clean it religiously. So then I decided, going to school, I'd go do it on the side. So I went to the local marine store, said, "What's a good wax?" Guy gives me a tub of Gary's cleaner wax. And then the one step wonder there, and started to do, work that way, and then kind of said, there's got to be a better way. So then I just
Right.
immersed myself kind of in how to actually detail a boat, not just slap some crappy cleaner wax on with a white wool pad and a Makita.
It's so funny because
And
I think a lot of us start that way, right? We all
I didn't know
find.
any better.
Right. When we
So
don't, a lot of the times we don't know any better when we first get started, and we just grab a cleaner wax or just some wax from Walmart or just, McGuire's or one of those products.
and then
And
3M Super Duty.
yeah,
That
3M
and
Super Duty.
cleaner wax. That was like the two things I knew how to do.
Right. We all start somewhere and hopefully we continue to grow. So you got started about 15 years ago. So that's quite some time. What got you into it? Like, were your family into boating, or what kind of sparked your interest?
Yeah, I grew up, living in Long Island on the South Shore. I grew up on the water, fishing and boating in the summers. So kind of just always was drawn to the water. And then
Mm.
I was somewhat good at cleaning boats because, you either have that eye for it or you don't, where you could see like every speck of dirt and everything that's out of whack. So I started to clean boats to make some extra cash on the side. And when I came out of college, it was the midst of the recession, so there was no
Mhm.
jobs to be had. So I said, screw it. Threw up some ads on Craigslist and started building a business off of that. And I grew the detailing business at one point. In that prime, I was doing 400 boats a season up north. So it became like an employment agency to keep that many guys to get through that many boats.
Wow.
So as time progressed, I kind of scaled it down and I shifted into managing boats and captaining them and doing less volume. And over through all that, I met a guy who was a blender for a living. He worked primarily on makeups. And I
Hmm.
said, what about, taking this stuff? So I gave him a bunch of what I was using and said, I like what this does. I like what that does, but I wish this did that. And we kind of just started to hash it out from there, taking what I liked and morphing it into what I thought people would like better.
Okay, so you got started and you started to grow a team. How long did you stay solo, like washing boats and kind of getting into it and detailing?
Um, Probably a year to a year and a half. And
Mhm.
then again, I was still pretty young, so I had a ton of connections of college kids to pick to, just throw on the boats for the summers. And one thing, like anything, to keep guys is a different story, as you know. Um, so now it's just over time, I've learned just given if you train people the right way and you take the time to show them, it's a lot easier than just giving them a buffer and saying good luck and then I'll check on your work.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably do that, and you really have to be hands-on because I think the detailing industry is just so specific, and it's really just such a skill, a
Yeah.
talent, and you have to be there and help people direct on. You can't just give them the buffer and let them go, or it's not going to end out good. So, Yeah, I agree with that. And it's hard to find people who really like to do it too.
Well,
I'm
that's what
sure
it
you've
is.
been
They
there.
like the idea of it, and then when you realize baking in the sun all day, getting splattered with compound and bleach and all that is not as glamorous as you may think it is.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's funny because I've kind of grown to love that. I don't think I enjoyed it at first, but I enjoyed to love that. And here I am in Florida now, in the hottest part of the country. So, but I love it down here. So, so you got started, and you had a couple of years, started growing a team, and then you said you scaled back and kind of got into yacht management a little bit. Does
Yeah,
that sound about
so
right? And you started kind of formulating, like, you were interested in products, and you're kind of wanting to come up with some better products. Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, so basically I got into the management side of things because I did during that time I got my captain's license. So then I came into contact with an older guy who kind of showed me the ropes of how to do the trips up and down the coast. And so then I branched out and started taking care of out in the Hamptons on Long Island. There's all these, you see them down in Florida, a lot of these very beautiful, expensive day boats and all these yachts that the guys aren't really qualified to run or take care of.
Right.
So we took, I stepped in and started to grow that end of the business to do less work and make a little bit more cash.
Wow. So you really have a lot of experience. You've done quite a few things, which is incredible. You've learned
Yeah.
a lot over the years, and it's probably led you to where you are today. So, what kind of, tell us a little bit about your company, Yati. Um, kind of explain for the audience and talk about some of the products maybe, and how you got that started.
Yeah. So Yachte kind of came about as through that management business. I bumped into a customer who was a blender for a living, and his specialty was makeups, as he called unicorn dust. Um, so then we just got to talking, and he said, "Oh, send me some of your stuff, and I'll see what I can do." So I sent him what I was using at the time, and basically said, "Oh, I like this, but I wish I could, it didn't dry up so fast, or I wish this didn't leave as much of a sand pit in the boat as it does."
Right, right.
And or this can, because again, working, it's not like pulling a car into a shop. You're out in the sun, so you need products that will
Hmm.
work in the sunlight, especially with the coatings and everything like that too. You can't escape the elements.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
So I took those years of experience to try and build upon what was there, because there's plenty of great products on the market, and there's no one perfect product for any situation. You still need a toolkit of a bunch of different stuff, because every boat's gel coat is different. You could come up to a Carver versus Sea Ray, and the same amount of oxidation in one will just cut easily with the other, and you may need to switch it up on the next one.
Yeah, I
So
agree. I think some people might limit themselves when they try to stick to one compound or one polish, because it's just not going to work in every situation, especially outside too. Like you said, like, there's compounds I'll use that they dry up quick, and
yeah.
it's really hard to work with them, and even polishes for that sense. And yeah, I think just formulating some of these products to be able to handle the sun and the heat is just so important. So yeah, so I guess, like, what were some of the products that you really like that you tried to mix in, like, kind of formulate with your own products?
So I used a lot of I grew up using 3M. I started with Super Duty, got into Imperial and like 3M High Gloss. And then when I started to go spend time down in Florida, you kind of got opened up to some more of the boutique brands that are out there now, and would start to play with those, something like Stark, back in the day when they first started. Um, I used a lot of their stuff, and grew it from there in terms of like anybody using Menzerna,
Mm,
um, even some of the Roops when they first started making products on the scene, coming out with the compounds.
right.
And I used to use a ton of McGuire's flagship wax. The black bottle was like my
Hmm.
go-to after a heavy buff job.
Yeah, I used to use that a lot when I first started in my
It was
first year.
convenient, easy to get, and it worked. It
Yeah,
was
it gave a good shine. Yeah,
exactly.
it
And
gave
then
a
you
good
throw it on
shine.
the DA and you can just let it ride.
Right. Yeah, it was really easy to work with. I did like that product, but I just don't think it lasted as long as I would have liked it to. So, yeah. So what were, so you started in, what was it, 2017 or was it earlier?
Um, no, we started kind of posting stuff, but we didn't really roll much out until like ended 2018, 2019 was where we started to really kind of put everything out. We had some the first thing I had was not even compounds or anything. It was it's an air purifier, like a tea tree gel
Hmm.
product that helps with boat odors.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's kind of like my original brainchild.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that.
Um and then we had a hiccup with that, but it's resolved now. So
Mhm.
those are back in the the swing of things. And then because that was a simple one to do while we were formulating everything else and kind of going through the motions with rolling out a baseline of products. Because when I first started it, I didn't have a network of detailers, so it was really just relying on my insight. Where now I can send it to the guys who do buy a ton of products and say, "Hey, what do you think of this? Is this working better than this, or does this have potential?"
Hmm. Yeah, I really want to dive into, I guess how a product's created. But before we get to that, I just wonder, like, any of the, I know as business owners and other detailers out there who may be listening, you're gonna have challenges along the way. Like, what were some of the challenges to starting up Yachty, your product company?
Well, initially it was cash flow,
Mm,
just to get the baseline of throwing out a handful of different products and then just hoping they sell without a name. So it's like, well, I'm going to make all these products, and if they don't sell, I'm stuck with a ton of product that I don't need that much to keep my other business going. Um, but fortunately, I had some people that liked it right off the bat, and we were able to sell and keep growing. And then we started to hit a stride, and then the pandemic hit.
mm,
So then it became hard to get the raw materials and even the bottles. Like I had to go source thousands of spray triggers. And so now, even now, because it's still hard to get, and the prices of like silicone, for example, every time I make a run, it's 2, 3 times more than what I paid even a month before. So we're making massive runs that are eating up the capital that all the profits we make that we could put into marketing just to keep our current customers happy, to try and stay from not going out of stock on products.
right. So the prices of everything go up during the pandemic, but from my understanding, the detailing continued pretty aggressively. So did that, I'm sure you continue to sell a lot of product.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know and I think even through, because people in general either thrived or died through the pandemic. People
Hmm.
made a ton of
Oh
money
yeah.
in whatever they were doing, or they lost everything. So we noticed a lot of boats now are just going straight for the ceramic paying that premium for ceramic coatings seem to be doing extremely well. I don't know if it's a combination of people being more educated as a whole, plus having all that extra cash to say, hey, instead of a $50 a foot buff job, let's go with the $100 a foot coating job.
Hmm. Yeah, I do see that too. I see the ceramic coatings being a lot more popular now. I don't
Guys that
know.
never would have considered it are saying, oh, can you do this? And yeah.
Right. I think we're seeing a changing market a little bit in terms of people becoming more open to that because it takes some time when you have something newer in the industry, and a lot of people don't know much about it and they've known wax for 20, 30, 40 years. So that's what they stick to when they don't realize there's other things out there and there's better things out there, polymer sealants and ceramic coatings if you do them properly. But yeah, so do you want to explain a little bit about like the process of like, I have some of your products in front of me today, but like going actually, taking your product from start to finish? Like, do you work with a team? Do you work with, like, how does this process work? You don't have to go super in depth, but just kind of explain. Perhaps
Yeah,
someone listening is interested in maybe starting their own product company at some point.
you got a couple different routes that you can go. You can go from scratch. There are other companies that do, white label. But when it comes to formulating, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Take whatever you're currently using, and they can,
Mm.
if you have a blender, they can look and say, okay, here's the what they call the SDS sheet, which is the ingredient, whatever the formulation is within. It doesn't give you the specifics, but it gives you kind of the broad strokes of what the product is made of. So they could say, okay, it's got X, Y, and Z in here, and then like X stands for whatever, how much lubrication is in that product, then the type, the grit size, and all this other stuff. So
Mm.
you can, because even me, I always joke with the chemist. I go, just dumb it down for me, put it in redneck speak, because I'm not a chemist. I just know what it's supposed to do when I put it on a boat. Does it
Right.
get rid of all that oxidation? Is it giving me, 6 months of protection? What is it doing? I don't need to know the technical side
I
to
get it.
understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you get the broad idea of what you're looking at over
Mhm.
time, and then I let them just do the heavy lifting. So I
Okay.
say, okay, I like this product, but I wish it had more working time. So they'll look and they'll say, okay, if we add this much more of this, it will increase that.
Mhm. So you're always continually looking to improve your products. Is that right?
Yeah,
As you see needed. If you don't like
yeah.
something, then you're
So,
gonna get back with your chemist and try to
and then
try to
we'll
get a little
take
better product.
input in from guys like yourself who use it and say, hey, this is really good, or, this wasn't, can this do this instead?
Mm.
Or are you thinking of making, like we're working on a heavier cut than ours, because
Right.
our heavy cut is good for a lot of your everyday oxidation, but then those colored hulls or those boats that you just don't want to sand, that need that, instead of doing 4 passes with that, can we do one or two with that extra heavy, pop down to that heavy cut, and then,
Absolutely. Yeah.
work our way
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. So I have exfoliate right here in front of me. So what is the grit for this? What would you say it cuts out sanding scratches? Like
You can step it to like 1,000, but on most of the time I just say, 1,200 grit, and that's a diminishing abrasive.
Mm.
So as you work it in, the particles go from much coarser to a finer particle, to finish it down. So there's less swirls left behind. So when you go into either a medium or a finishing polish, depending on what you're doing, you have less legwork to do.
Yeah. Well, what I love about these three products, you have exfoliate, brighten, and tone, which is the medium cut, and then moisture, the finishing polish, is it gets really, I mean, you can pretty much get really fine with it. So
Yeah.
you can pretty much polish down to getting out micro scratches. I would imagine, right?
Yeah. So you can, if you did some deep cutting, and that's like the whole, so the medium cut can go two ways. If you put a cutting pad on it, it'll cut pretty well. It 1,500 grit scratches. But if you put something, whatever your favorite polishing pad is, either on your Roots or your Flex or even your Makita, it leaves a really good gloss, and that one doesn't dust up. That's probably more
Mhm.
number one seller because of how versatile it is.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
So
And
that one
then
you can
okay.
play with, has a lot of play in it.
And then moisture.
That
What
one's
this
a
one's
nice
finished down to like
finishing
2,000.
polish. It's kind of like a swirl remover, but it also has a little bit of polymer in it. So for
Mm.
those jobs where the gel coat was really dry out and chalky, it kind of puts some hydration back in the surface, so the wax doesn't just suck in if there's still a little bit of, the pores didn't fully, like anything, when it's that oxidized, the pores are huge in the gel coat, so you still may have some pores that you kind of pre-filling so that the wax takes better to
I
the
have a
boat.
question that I'm wondering that I maybe think you could answer. I think it's really important, and maybe I'm wrong, but you need to some people just want the wash and wax, and I try to tell most of my customers to shy away from that, just because I think it's important to restore the oils back into the gel coat. Is that right, or am I wrong? Like the whole purpose of, sometimes I wonder, like, okay, I'm buffing and I'm polishing, and then you'll hear some detailers say, like, okay, then I'm going to wash the boat down with Dawn dish soap. Does that make sense, or would you want to seal it right after that? Because I get mixed opinions from people. Some people say that you want to strip off the wet, like strip off the polish, and then some people say you want to keep those oils on the boat and then seal over top of that.
I kind of lean towards that, and I don't know if it's more sometimes
That's what
being
I think.
lazy,
Well,
but we always, we use like our bubble bath a lot of times
mhm,
after a heavy cut, except if we're gonna coat, because you're not looking for the same kind of bond as you are with a coating. With wax is a simple, much more cut and dry process of let's buff it, clean it up, and put some wax on it. You're not looking for that sheer perfection. So again,
yes,
if you're
yes.
not, the gel coat's not 100%, you kind of do want some of those oils because then you'll have a better surface
Mhm.
in theory. So like I had this older boat. It's an older 48 Ocean from the 80s. And the first time we tried to coat it, because you could see the resin coming through in the bridge and everything. So there was like no gel coat left. So we had a good shine on it. And it was just absorbing all the coating. So I said, screw it. Why don't we try waxing it first and then
Mhm.
putting the coating on? And that did the trick, because then you could see the coating actually didn't suck into the gel coat anymore. So it kind of took to the wax. And then, this was before kind of all those primer polishes came out. So it's in theory the same idea as an SiO2 polish, just with
Mhm.
polymer, but it relates to what you were saying, that kind of using the oils of the polish to keep the hydration in the surface. And that's kind of
Right.
exactly what
Right.
that moisturize is
Yeah, I've
really
been going
just to
back and
kind of,
forth on this, and I just intuitively, I almost feel like it's right to keep. If you're gonna do a polymer, I think you want to keep as long as you have a clear surface and one second, as long as you have a clear surface and as long as you wipe off all the polish before you're, and you're detailed about it, right? And you're not leaving
yeah,
swirls in the boat. Like I think that's what you should do. You should keep those polishes on the boat because I notice when I wash, like I wash the boat sometimes, but I'll use a pH balanced soap. I'm not trying to strip all the oils off. And perhaps you mentioned that with bubble bath.
yeah,
Is a pH balanced soap, right? Yeah. So
exactly. That one has some SiO2 in it, but we haven't had any adverse issues in
mm,
terms of buffing, washing, and then putting polymer on. It's really, again, the coatings are that whole other animal where you want that perfect bond.
right. And perhaps, if you are going to wash with dish soap, I just noticed it really dries out the surface and you
The
might be better.
rubbers get dried out a lot.
Yes, a lot. You might be better off putting a couple coats of, at that point, you might as well put a couple coats of polymer on. I think it can benefit more than one coat
Yeah.
from what I hear and talking to other detailers. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because I'm sure some people maybe
The
wonder the
key,
same things.
yeah, and the key, like anything though, if you don't get all the enough of the oxidation out, you're gonna not you're gonna have issues regardless with wax adhering or coatings. Any type of protection is just gonna suck right in and reoxidize quicker.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point to make. I want everyone to hear this. So yeah, if you don't get all the oxidation out, it doesn't matter what you're gonna do after that because the chances are the oxidation will be back within, pretty fast. If you have oxidation in the boat, it'll come back really fast from what I see. Would you agree?
Yeah, like I've even seen it with especially with the ceramics, guys will lay a fresh coating down and you'll see a colored hull just start oxidizing, but it's still hydrophobic beyond belief because it's actually oxidizing under the
Under
coating.
the coating. Yes. Yes. And we can dive into, we're going to dive into all this here in a second, but there's so much things to cover. And I know we only have so much time because this is a fun conversation. I think we're going to help a lot of people. So, um, yeah. So I guess, yeah, we can go ahead and dive into ceramics. So what are your thoughts on ceramic coatings? And what's your outlook for them and how to maintain them properly. We talked a little bit about compounds, polishes, even polymers a little bit. So now let's go ahead and dive into some ceramics. I think this is what everyone wants to hear.
I'm a big advocate of it, but I also know the limitations of them. I've worked in saltwater my whole life, both up in New York and down in Florida, South Florida, where you are. So you have to be a realist when it comes to what to expect from them.
Hmm.
You know, I always would explain to my customers before I made them, just that it was wax on steroids is really kind of the best assimilation. And they are great. I do it on my own boats, my own cars. I typically do it annually on my own stuff because I leave it outside all winter, and I don't cover my boats. So every year I just kind of hit it with a light polish just to clean up the gel and put a fresh coat on, and I have no issues with oxidation. Um, the key with coatings, it's twofold. You need a good prep, so you have to make sure that whoever's doing the buff work does an excellent job cleaning up the gel coat and prepping the surface from getting all the oils out in this scenario. And then if you're going with, a primer polish, to follow whatever the instructions on that box say. If it says to let it cure for 30 minutes and then wipe it off, do that. And then to actually let the coating set up and not wipe off active, ceramic that hasn't fully flashed yet, because
Right.
then you're going to not get the full benefits. So there's so many variables that go into the perfect storm of getting the right coating job. But
Yeah,
then,
absolutely.
the rest is educating the customer into using a pH balance soap, whether it's just one that's a simple pH balance or one like Bubble Bath that has some silica in it. That also is pH balance, and then using the right booster sprays every once in a while just to kind of keep, add a sacrificial layer, so that's what gets hit first instead of the original coating.
Okay, so yeah, I think the prep is so important. Like you said, like I would shy people away from ceramic if they're not really sure exactly how to restore a boat and remove all the oxidation. Because even though it's not technically supposed to happen, I do feel like you can have oxidation come under the coating. And this is
Yeah.
where I wonder, where I know it's rare, but for example, Stark Yachte does have a prep polish. And I wonder if that restores some oils into the gel coat before you put the ceramic on with it. Like, what would you say? Like, why would you have something like that versus just like an alcohol wipe and then coat over top?
So, gel coat, as opposed to even like a marine paint or an automotive paint, you have clear coat on automotive paint. Gel coat is porous. So, like that example of I waxed that old ocean to put the coating on, the primer polish is doing just that. It's filling in the pores to make that surface. If you ever seen the diagrams of all the craters of
Mhm.
what gel coat kind of looks like, it's making it as smooth as possible so that way you get the best bond of the coating to the actual boat surface.
Okay.
And that's where that kind of comes into play. Those primer polishes is, almost like a glaze back in the day to just fill in all the imperfections and then let the coating bond. And with those, since they are based silica, based,
Right.
you're bonding the same technology to one another. It's not
Okay.
like polymer versus SiO2 trying to interact. It's SiO2 on
Okay, so
SiO2.
it's all formulated to kind of go with each other and bond properly. Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned to me earlier or today previously that you guys were going to launch a prep polish soon. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have a new one coming out called Solar Prime. That's gonna be exactly what we were talking about. One of these primer polishes to
Mm.
basically come after your prep wipe. So you would go with your IPA wipe to get all the compound oils out. So that way you can put one of these polishes down to make those surface more
Mm.
uniform so that the coating can actually have a better chance of bonding correctly to the boat.
Right. So that'll bond with your current ceramic product. So you guys have a ceramic and a graphene. ceramic.
Yeah.
Is that right? So you
Yep.
have two. Okay.
So we offer both.
Okay. Perfect. And yeah, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the ceramic and I guess with proper maintenance, right? So you're washing the boat and you're taking good care and putting SiO2s over it. Well, let's go ahead. What's an SiO2 for people who maybe are unsure exactly what that is? What does that do for a ceramic or what does that do for the surface?
So SiO2, which for people who don't know is silicon dioxide is the actual chemical name. And that's the active ingredient in most ceramic coating formulas, unless they're like a TiO2 or something like that.
Right.
So they, so you can have it in some products are water based, obviously, like you have your soaps or like quick detailers that are infused with it versus, your more traditional ones. And basically, the difference between like the sprays, a car based coating, and then like a marine grade coating is the concentration level of this SiO2 that's in the product. So we offer spray coatings that we use as our maintenance ones that are like 20% active versus our ceramics are 50 and change, and then the graphene is slightly more active. By active, we mean, 20%, 50 something percent of it is, ceramic of that SiO2.
Okay, so
In it.
for SiO2, so these are in both the ceramic, like the marine grade ceramics and the graphene.
Yeah. So,
So
well,
so
like
what makes the graphene different?
ours is building upon our ceramic technology. So it takes the same base formula, and I had a bottle sitting that doesn't have a label on it. And what people, they say is just dust in the, graphene dioxide dust. So you could kind of see here, this one is, you can see it sitting on the bottom. And then when
Hmm. Okay, right.
you have, throughout the whole thing, that's the graphene, re almost like oil and water kind of situation.
Hmm.
You re-melded it, for lack of a better word. Um, and so we kind of did that with the idea of being able, we had guys who were using the marine grade stuff on cars, and we wanted something that could be used both automotive and marine. And also kind of, we found, at least with the graphene, that it works on pretty much any substrate or different surface. It works good on metals, window, um, plastics, and things like that, where with the traditional ceramic, we didn't see as much of a difference putting it on metals or, the window of your boat. So I believe in using less SKUs. So if we can do multiple things with one product, there's no need to be, not to throw anybody under the bus, but like a chemical guys, where you have 8,000 different soaps and 40 different products that could solve, you could solve in one product. So that's kind of
Right.
where we went with that idea. And for the most part, yeah, it does help with, down in Florida, you have horrible water. The water is super hard down there as a whole. So it does help with some of the water spotting, but I find it more user friendly than our traditional ceramic. But
Hmm.
there's guys who, it comes to personal preference. Both, we've seen good durability. I had a buddy text me actually yesterday that he had a customer down and up in the Panhandle with 18 months of the Solar Defense, which is our traditional ceramic that's still beating extremely well. So, and then, I have the graphene's been out for about a year and a half at this point. So I have it on my car for that long, because when I was formulating that one originally, some of the bottles came in the winter months.
Okay.
So,
I see. Okay.
but from what I've seen with that, it's been good too. Again, some people say they don't like the graphene, they prefer the others. So it's personal preference. So we try to cater to everybody.
Yeah, it sort of is, and I don't even know if that I have a preference from what I've seen with the ones that I've used. But so you're saying graphene's more versatile, like it's just easier to use on different surfaces, right?
Yeah, we
Is that what
found
you're
it
kind of
bonds
saying?
better to more than just your paint or your gel coat, where again, metal and windows, instead of having a dedicated metal coating, you just buy one bottle to do the whole boat. And
Mm,
it's not to say you can't use a regular ceramic on metal either. It's just we
right.
found it plays nicer with it.
Right, and perhaps that's why other companies have made specific like metal ceramic products. Perhaps they were noticing that the SiO2 ceramic wasn't bonding as well as they would have liked.
Yeah, and I think from when we were looking into it, it may be a heavier, you know, concentration of ceramic in there. So you're
Mm,
just increasing. And what happens as you increase that, typically the formulation becomes thicker. So when you
mhm,
get into these really high concentrations, they're not as user friendly to work with. So they may
mm.
flash basically instantly, or you know, you just can't do large sections where, I know with Star, because I know you use them a lot, they're very user friendly coatings as well, where you can do these bigger sections, especially when you're doing even like, a 30 something foot center console. There's a lot of surface area to go put two coats of ceramic on. So if you can
Right.
do, basically half a hull in one shot, it's
Yeah.
makes your life easier.
So I do have a question though. So this comes down to the concentration of SiO2 in the coating that gives you, or is that what gives you the extra work time? How does this work? And does that actually affect the coating? Because I notice a lot of the ceramics are about like 1 minute flash time. So is that the standard? Is that where it should be? Like I almost think that sometimes you having more workability actually might compromise for the coating and in terms of the durability. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so there's two schools of thought. So if you're using a less active coating that's more, the sprays are just that much thinner, so you're not going to see crazy durability no matter what you put on. But I know when we were formulating it, the chemist said, basically, like if you took an automotive coating that maybe is 40% active,
Mm,
it would take 3 to 4 coats to equate to the amount of thickness that you would get out of 2 coats of a more concentrated solution. So again, on a porous surface that's going to get see so much more abuse. Again, do you really want to go around a 50-foot boat 4 times with putting ceramic on? If we could
right.
spray it
Yeah.
on, I would too, literally out of the hose and just call it a day. I'd love to do that and
Right.
sit there working, a 5x5 section. Um,
Right. So are you saying marine coatings are they're higher concentrated than automobile
yeah,
coatings?
typically
Yeah.
from, my research that we've
Hmm.
done along the way, that you know those a lot of the automotive ones you may see in like the high 30s into the low 40% of active ceramic, where a lot more of the marine grade ones are going to be north of 50%.
So we have the ceramic, which is SiO2 based, and then we have graphene, which is carbon based. Is that right? Is-
Some are pure
Carbon?
carbon based, like ours is SiO2 infused with the carbon technology,
Mm,
so it's taking
okay.
what existed and building upon the existing
Oh,
formula.
okay. So it's okay. I like that. So you're taking what already works and adding extra benefits with the graphene.
That was,
Okay. The
the
intention.
concept behind it.
Okay.
Whether people want to believe it or not, again, coatings in general, there's a million different coating brands, and it comes down to what you're comfortable using. You can try all the big names, your Ceramic Pro, IGL, System X, G Technic, and all that. And then, one guy may just love how G Technic applies, one guy may love how Stark applies, and then the guy loves how
Mm,
Yachte applies. And everybody could have a bad install with any of them too. You could have a bad taste in your mouth with any coating.
right.
It's really, coatings are a crapshoot sometimes, I feel, because there's so many factors that go into, is it going to be a good install or not?
Mm. Yeah, I feel like you have so many companies making these, and they're all pretty similar, I would say, relatively. All these big brands, including Yachte. It just everyone has a different formula of what they find works best, right? I mean, everyone has, okay, we think this is the right amount of SiO2. We think this is, necessary. Now, what is VOC? So low VOC. I know IGL promotes low VOC. That has to do with, I guess, environmentally friendly, option for a coating that just releases the toxins that come out in the flash process. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so you're kind of on the point with that. And again, there's so much regulation in general in the marine industry of, with bottom paints being pesticide, like up in New York, you have to have a pesticide sprayer's license to actually apply bottom paint to a boat.
Mm,
So where there's all this regulation, like if you look at the labels at a lot of this stuff, it basically all says it's harmful to marine life and, to kick oxidation and all this other stuff to the curb. A lot of times, if like back in the day, I remember I read on 3M, it was like kerosene in there. I'm like, shit, you got kerosene in this? I should wear a mask when I'm buffing,
yeah.
you know? Um, so I get it from that standpoint, but a lot of times in this day and age, eco-friendly and effectiveness don't always go hand in hand.
Mm,
Even though our degreaser is a plant-based degreaser,
hmm.
it works very good on, organic matter. There's always exceptions to the rules, but I found the coatings are pretty nasty stuff. If like anything, I tell you, don't smell the bottle. What's the first thing you do when you crack open that coating? You take a whiff, and then you instantly choke on
Right.
the
Yeah,
vapors just go right
absolutely.
through you.
I know some people get headaches. Which is why I do like coating outdoors because you eliminate some of the fumes. I remember I used to coat in storage in Ohio, and you just get a lot more of the fumes in terms of the compounds and everything. Because I mean, to be honest, none of these products are, the best things to breathe in. But
No, I definitely over time learned to just wear the face buff when I'm doing any of that stuff. The compounding, you just see the dust flying everywhere.
right, yeah, absolutely, and yeah, I noticed some compounds dust more than others, so that all comes down to what's in it and stuff like that. But to stay on ceramics, I think we covered a lot of the basics. I don't want to dive like needle deep into it, but just maybe one last question about it would be like, what components make up the ceramic? Because that from what I hear or from what I've read, there's three components. There's like a solvent, you have like the SiO2 and something else. Is that right? Do you know the components that make up the ceramic?
Um,
I don't know if you've talked to your chemist specifically
Hold on,
about
I'll pull
this.
you up the sheet right now. Um, Give me
Yeah.
one second.
Yeah, I was reading a good article by IGL. They just kind of explained a little bit more into actually how these coatings are formulated and stuff. So if you had a chance or if you knew of it, if not, it's not a problem because I know you're not the chemist, you're the detailer out there doing the work. So um I don't necessarily expect you to know hand for hand, but yeah, I was just interested in that, and then like how the reaction actually takes place, what's going on as the flash is occurring. Because I know like you're as a coating cures, it's pushing out. I think it's VOC. Is that right?
Yeah, so you have your resin that are in it,
Resin.
your SiO2,
Mm.
and then what's the other
Certain
thing?
resin and an additive or something, a catalyst maybe.
Yeah, that causes that flashing to occur.
Flash,
And
right?
basically, like you said before, there are a bunch of brands, and a lot of times it comes down to what there are variations of the SiO2, so there's like polysilazine, and so
Mm.
that's the core difference between your IGL or your Yachty or your G Technic or something, is that type of SiO2 they're using.
Mm. Right.
So
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, so and then just for people listening, like how do you know when you should wipe off the coating?
So there's always a few different ways. I know, like with our graphene, it starts to sweat and it actually looks like it's, like beating up. But the biggest one, I believe in overkill. I go heavy handed a lot of times when I coat to try and get as much on there, is I kind of wait for it to get grabby. That's really across any coating, that little bit of tackiness where like you take the towel
Mm.
on the surface and it gives you just a little bit of resistance. That's kind of how you know enough of the product has bonded to the surface and what's left isn't active ceramic that's bonding.
Yeah, I think some people might get anxious and try to wipe it off a little early because they don't
And
want to sit here and struggle.
every day is different with coatings. You can use the same coating 100 different times. And if it's super humid and you're right in the sun, you can have 30 seconds. But then another day where it's 50 degrees, mild, you can do the whole side of the boat and go back.
Absolutely. I've
So
been
it's
there.
really, and throughout the day, it could change. The morning could be one thing, and then you go take a break for lunch, you come back, and you can, have 30 seconds instead of 5 minutes.
Mhm. Yeah, so yeah, I think this is an amazing dive into ceramics. So, I think we'll go ahead and move on from this. But oh, I also see you have your graphene refresh, so a quick detailer product. So that's great to use on really anything, like you mentioned, any surfaces.
So that one's water based, so you can actually use that as just a drying aid too. So it was just something extra that instead of having to go take a milder version of our ceramics or our graphene where you have to dry the surface, make sure it's clean, put it on, let it flash for a minute, that you just work into your washing regimen.
Okay.
So it's, wax, even if the boat's waxed, it's easy to use. I was looking for something simple.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'm really interested in that product. I'm excited to try it out, and I'm actually excited to try them all out. So I want to ask you something like, up to this point in your life, like was all this worth it? Was starting your company, was getting into detailing. Do you ever have any regrets or do you look back or do you even have time to look back and think about it?
There's always time to look back. Um, no, as you know, it's full of a lot of highs and a lot of lows. A lot of lows of watching the bank account go to near nothing. And then, everything's going so smooth, and then you're afraid to say it's going smooth because, you feel like trouble's looking over your shoulder. Um, but, every day is totally different.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't change the challenge. Again, even starting from nothing and working to work for some of the biggest manufacturers in the world, detailing their boats, taking some of the wealthiest people in the world boating every weekend to go get, what I call the $10,000 hamburger every
Hmm.
weekend. Um,
Right, right. That's the dream.
it's all, life could be easier if you had a steady paycheck, but I wouldn't, I don't regret any of it. I learned, as long as you learn from the mistakes and even the good stuff, if you keep repeating the same
Mm.
issues, then you should
Right.
probably check.
That's a problem.
Yeah,
You're pretty
but
close-minded.
you'll always stumble. It's what you do afterwards.
Yeah, I think you gotta look forward to the lows, knowing that they're coming. But I don't think you should be content in them. But I think you gotta stay, you just gotta put your head down and keep working. You can't give up. You can't sit there and feel sorry for yourself. You gotta go out,
No,
happen.
and I know, um, one of my really good customers, I take him boating every weekend. Very successful businessman. He told me any fool could get to 95%. What differentiates us from everybody else is that extra 5%.
Mm,
And it's something as simple as picking up the phone when these guys call. A
mm,
lot of guys just don't answer the phone and don't call people back. So if you make it a point to return every phone call and pick up the phone, even if you know you're going to get yelled at, it
mhm.
will set
Yeah,
you apart
it
from
can be just one thing.
everybody else, especially down by you. Everybody hangs up a shingle and is a boat detailer in Florida. Same
Mhm.
thing up here. There's a million different companies that clean boats. It's why are they buying Simon or wwhy are they buying Austin
Right. It really
for?
comes down to what do you offer that's different? Can you be trusted? Yeah, it comes down to a lot of things, and But yeah, I just wanted to ask you, if you, as it seems like most people who, they don't going out and trying something and living your dream, most people don't regret it. So I think the only times people regret it is if they stay in like that job they hate, or they wanted to do something but never actually did it.
Yeah, no,
So
you gotta. I was lucky. Again, my parents gave me the opportunity to at least try something on my own, and if I failed, so be it. But I
mhm,
didn't, and if it all ended tomorrow and I had to go do something else, I wouldn't look back and say I wasted, you know, over 10 years of my life
mhm.
working on boats
Yeah,
in
exactly.
different capacities.
Right. Yeah, I love it. I just do. I love the scene, the environment. Nothing beats being out on a boat.
No,
Especially when you love everything about the industry. If you love fishing and if you're into the boat life, like it's just an amazing scene. Um, it's funny because I didn't grow up boating. I actually this past week I actually got on my first jet ski, had a lot of fun. That was fun.
what'd you
That was,
think of that?
that was a blast.
Now, those are
Funnest thing
not
I've
cheap.
done.
Those new
No,
ones are
no.
stupid money.
Right. Yeah, my buddy sent me over one. It was like 15,000. He only had like 60 hours on it. I'm like, he's trying to get me to buy one already. But yeah, so this is what happens when you're a detailer.
You get to see things a lot of people don't.
Right. Yep. And you have experiences most people don't get to have. So I guess, do you have any advice? We're gonna kind of slow this down and start to wrap up. Do you have any advice for people in the marine industry, like getting started? And you've had a long journey, so I know you gotta have some advice. Like, what would your biggest tip be? I know you've had downs and highs, and you've had it all.
Slow growth, as silly as that sounds, because what happens is you start to scale, and if you get too big, the wheels fall off the cart, and the work you're putting out isn't the work that got you to the phone blowing
Mm-hmm.
up all day long saying, when can you detail my boat? And guys waiting a month for you to come to show, to go detail their boat.
Mm-hmm.
Is just really take your time, baby steps, even if it's just $10,000 more the next year. You don't have to go from, I made under $30,000 my first year detailing boats. You don't have to go from 30 grand to 150, because the amount of work in between 30 and 150 is a lot of different, is a lot more boats, or,
It's a lot.
so especially if you're a one-man operation, to get to those kind of numbers, your hands are going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and, just answer the phone when it rings and call people back, those two things, and do the right thing by the customer, and you'll build a successful business over time.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of good things. I think slow and steady is great. I think for me, it's not normal that people like change completely. So this is my third year. It's been almost exactly 3 years that I've been doing this, and I moved to the location I want to be in long term. I know it's a setback now, but I think, if I continue steady and stable, I think, it'll work its way up. But yeah, I think that's the key, like patience and learning as much as you can, trying new products that, anything you can do, try new products, and always doing the right thing for the customer and doing extra sometimes, even when it may not make sense. I think
Yeah.
it all goes a long way.
Boating is a very tight knit group of guys. And as you
Mm.
go up in the industry into these more exclusive harbors, they all know each other through business, personal stuff. So if you screw one guy over, that whole circle will know you screwed them over, and you're done.
Yeah, you're done for that
So the
area.
key is really just, if something isn't up to snuff, you just go back, you spend the 20 minutes touching it up, or, you know, to get it to where their customer is happy.
Right.
And also, striving for perfection. A lot of times the average customer isn't going to see all these micro scratches that are in the surface. If you get it shiny, no swirls, holograms in there, a lot of times you don't have to spend days on a 20-foot boat just trying to get it 100% for that extra couple points that the boat owner's not even going to notice. You'll
Mhm.
notice, but if you're trying to grow a business, you can't spend all that time on those projects. You got to get in efficiently, get out.
Hmm. Right. So yeah. So yeah, this was an amazing conversation. I think a lot of people are going to take some stuff away from this, whether they're a boat owner or a detailer. But yeah, so I have the full line in front of me, and you guys are going to you got a few new products coming out. It sounds like maybe a heavy cut and a prep polish. So I'm really excited to see where your brand goes, and I'm definitely going to be trying out all these products. So I'm
Awesome.
super excited. So I think what we're gonna do, anybody on the YouTube version, if you're watching, we're gonna leave a link below in the description. And there's gonna be a code. So anybody who watches this video will receive a discount code. We haven't determined exactly, but maybe 10% off or something. But yeah, Austin's put a lot of work into these products, and you've been in this for quite some time, and I know you've worked really closely with your chemist and getting these products right. So I'm super excited to give these a shot. I really am. Because every product line is different, and I like how your line goes down really fine. I do appreciate that a lot, because I know on darker color boats sometimes it's necessary to,
That extra step of even
yeah,
just
that extra
going
stuff.
from using the medium where you can take it on a wool pad and then just go into a foam polishing pad helps tremendously. Using the same product, just
Hmm.
altering your pad
It's
choice or
altering the
even
pad.
your
Okay.
machine choice too make a huge impact.
Yeah,
You
everybody wonders that. Do you think it's important to, like, can you use the rotary to do everything, or do you think it's important to have more of a versatile machine, like maybe a flex, or is that not necessary, or
It
a
depends what we're
DA?
doing. Still 95% of the time with most details, I go and grab a rotary first with a white wool pad.
Mhm.
Um, unless we have some of these other boats that are painted with, some even have automotive paints on them, then we'll go grab something like a Roops or a Flex to start.
Okay, that's good advice. So
If you're
rotary.
starting out, you really can't go wrong picking up like spending the money, but you getting a Roops machine or one of the Flexes just because you're not going to burn through the gel coat. It'll take you a little longer, but you'll still get some killer results without having to worry about destroying your boat if you mess up.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point to make for people. So yeah, so like I said, check out the products, Yachte. You can find them. Well, yeah, where can they find you at? Social media. I'll throw all these up on the screen.
Yeah, so you got all our social medias at Team Yachty, and then our
Yachte, yes.
website is yachty.co. Um, and you can read, whatever you need on all the products, and there's plenty of helpful articles on the website too, in terms of from everything from figuring out what kind of oxidation you have to how to wax your boat, and even what you need to kind of wash it every week to keep it looking like you just jumped off with the full detail on it.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So you can be found on Instagram, and you can be found on your website. So I'll throw those up there. But yeah, you guys have, the thing I like too is you have a full line. Like, it's not just buffing and polishing. Like, you have ceramics, you have polymer sealant, purpose cleaners. You even have that odor thing, which I thought was pretty interesting. So a
And we
lot of
got
cool
more in the
products.
works.
So yeah, guys. So be sure to give Yachty a shot and get some of the products. I'm most interested in the buffing and polishing. So that'll probably be the first ones that I try out. But yeah, you got anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
Nah, just go have fun with it. I still, whenever I go work on my own boat, I still get enjoyment out of it, detailing and even just washing it after going fishing. So if you enjoy it, just do it.
All right, awesome. So guys, go follow Team Yachty, go check out their website. And we're gonna end the 1% podcast here. You can watch on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. And I will see you on the next podcast.